Yes.
Hello, my name is Ramisa, and the claim that I'm responding to today is if Iran develops nuclear weapons, the Middle East will become more stable. My opponent's secondary claims include nuclear weapons generally encourage stability. Second, Israel's nuclear monopoly contributes to the Middle East's instability. And last, Iran acts rationally. So my response to his claim is nuclear Iran will harm the already troubled Middle East. In response to secondary claim one, Iran's announcement of their nuclear program has caused interest from foreign countries to decrease significantly. The Iran Pulse report, which is a report released from the Iranian press, confirmed that their production in weapons from 2012 caused China's investment in that country to decline by 87%. The Iran Pulse also mentions the United States and other European nations issuing sanctions that led to the decline in investment of Iranian oil as a form of protesting to stop nuclear production. My opponent uses the term generally, implying that there has been a generalization made and the inferential leap made was not a proper one. Michael Crepon, an expert of foreign relations and security specializing in South Asian domestic affairs, states India and Pakistan have everlasting conflicts and their residents live in fear because of the development of nuclear powers. He also says that full-scale war was never present in nuclear countries. That's not true because full-scale war is identified as a totalitarian battle in which the country employs all resources. Wars that are not full-scale can also cause severe casualties. For example, the conflict between Pakistan and Kashmir is no way a full-scale war. However, many lives are being claimed daily. He also says that military conflicts decrease because of nuclear weapons. That's not true. Military conflicts do not always decrease as countries make nuclear weapons because Russia did not survive as a left-wing country. It broke into smaller pieces. Expert on foreign policy, international relations, and security studies, Zachary Keck published an article for The Diplomat stating a total of $400 million that were lost last year. If Iran continues their stance on nuclear weapons, the effects will be catastrophic for their economy. In response to secondary claim 2, the Shia-recognized countries with nuclear intentions now have the courage to challenge the handful of Sunni authoritarian regimes. To clear it up for everyone, Shia is the Muslim minority that teaches Islam differently, contrary to the Sunnis who make up the majority. Iranian intellectual Zaki Kalam was interviewed by Al Arabiya, an Islamic news agency, and said Iran supports federal republics and condemns Sunni authoritarian countries, which have shown no indication of carrying such weapons, thus putting those nations at risk. Michael Rubin, a resident scholar at the American Expertise Institute, reported the plot that was being unveiled regarding Iran's threat to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador. Israel is described as a monopoly for nuclear powers by my opponent. However, BBC News explains the controversy centering on Israel's alleged nuclear weapons. Israel has not declared they have nuclear weapons, nor have they signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It is believed Israel has these weapons, but it was never firmly established. He also implies that Israel is the only one who wants Iran to stop. Israel is not the only Middle Eastern country who fears Iran. Only allies in the Middle East for Iran include Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria. Iran would be another component in the monopoly that is currently owned only by Israel because the other Middle Eastern countries do not have nuclear weapons. In response to his third claim, one of the top priorities in Iran's agenda is to weaken Israel. Iran's new president has been quoted from the Iranian Students News Agency describing Israel as a disgraceful blot that should be wiped off the face of the earth. Matthew Brodsky, an official from the Security Department in Israel, has been quoted stating Hamas and Hezbollah have offered to join forces with the Iranian government to journey in their cause of reducing Israel together. So my question to my opponent is, how does a country act rationally? We have no comparison to see the difference between what a rational and irrational country is. He also claimed that Iran was seeking self-preservation, but from who? No one is threatening Iran. The U.S. never issued a statement claiming to attack Iran. Iran is not rational. those public officials who are in power right now have concerns that are questionable to the sake of any sort of peace in the Middle East. So to wrap things up, Iran's plan to develop nuclear weapons puts the Middle East at even more risk. Thank you.
All right, you preview the major claim and the secondary issues pretty well. You signpost as you get to each of those points, so it's relatively easy to follow. There's a lot of information on the first point that talks about what the economic impact is to Iran, so there are consequences to them. I think you need to put that into the context of what the advocate's argument was, because I'm not exactly sure how China's investment issue is relevant to the point about increasing the risk of war. The argument about India and Pakistan, I remember the advocate made this argument that says it created stability when both of these countries had nuclear weapons because it made it less likely that they were going to have a full-scale war. And you basically argue that means that they have continuous smaller-scale wars which still produce a substantial amount of death. So the idea that it's had a limiting impact, I think, it seems to be minimized to some degree by that continuing state of tension that's going on there. I think it would be easier to make that argument also if you show, for instance, that it's the presence of those nuclear weapons that encourages the conventional strategies in those areas to kind of pursue their objectives and keep it at a low level but continuous. I think if there was some evidence that supported that, that would be a good response there. The argument about Russia and how it broke down, I'm not exactly sure how that applies to the general argument here. And the amount of money that the U.S. lost because of investment here, I'm not exactly sure how that applies to the argument either. The argument on the second point really begins by talking about the differences between the different types of Islam. And I think what you basically come down to arguing here is that there are nations in the area that would feel threatened because they support a different kind of Islam, and that Iran, in essence, would be a potential enemy with extreme power in these contexts, and they would feel obligated, for instance, to match Iran in terms of developing nuclear weapons on their own. I think that the notion that we should have non-proliferation has been a long-standing approach to this issue, and the advocate is in essence saying we should toss that out. I think you need to show that it has been successful in the past, and that keeping nukes out of areas has in actuality reduced tensions between countries. The argument about Israel, I think, is pretty reasonable given that they haven't declared this. That's factual information there. It seems to be a widely accepted premise that Israel has these kinds of weapons. I think the other argument that you make here is that nobody is really threatening Iran, especially Israel is not threatening Iran, except in the context of feeling threatened themselves. So I think that this is a good argument, but it needs to be explained a little bit more, and you have a tendency to just kind of present the evidence on this point and let us try to make the inferences on it. And then on the third point, I think your basic premise here seems to be that Iran is not acting rationally, and we can tell that by the way they're threatening other countries in the area, their willingness to cooperate with Hamas and Hezbollah, and that those are potential problematic issues. And then, of course, you've got, what's his name, the guy who says we ought to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, which doesn't necessarily sound like a rational way of speaking either. Okay, thank you.